tell you something here. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you before. I was probably, well, it was still back in the late 50s, if that tells you anything. So I was just a little fella. And I remember being in the car with Dad, I don't know what we were talking about that brought it up. But I said, you know, when it gets to be 2000, I'll be 48 years old. Of course, that seemed like forever, you know, from that time, back in the 50s, you know. I remember how amazed I was. It was just something, when it turned to 1960, it was just it was phenomenal. It's like the world was going to end. Because for us, you know, Danny and Donnie and I, that was all we knew in the 50s. And all of a sudden, there it was. And now it's 2020.
Amazing.
It is, how time flies, and a new year. Maybe this year is going to be something special.
I was thinking the other day how we have video phones now, like the Jetsons.
We'll go back far, that Dick Tracy.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 8.
I don't think I can go back as far as you do.
You go back a couple of weeks farther. Chapter 8, verse 5 of Genesis tonight, as we're finally going to get to, I think, get Noah off of the ark tonight. He's been there for a while. Be reading a number of verses here, beginning at verse 5 of chapter 8. And the waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month, on the first day, were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro until the waters were dried up from off the earth. Also he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest for the sole of her feet, and she returned unto him into the ark, for the waters were upon the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand, and took her, and pulled her in unto him in the ark. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and again he sent forth the dove out of the ark. And the dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, and sent forth a dove, which returned not again unto him any more. Securely anchored on the earth again. It's just hot up here. Noah and the others needed only to wait for the flood waters to recede enough that they could leave the ark. Too much heat comes out of the office too. But it took yet another 7 months, so they were in the ark slightly over a year. If you add it all together, 371 days altogether. After 2.5 months, they could see the tops of the nearby lower mountains. 40 days later, Noah released a raven. 7 days later, a dove. The dove returned, but the raven was a scavenger bird. He has no qualms about resting on unclean surfaces. He stayed out there. A week later, though, Noah sent out the dove again, which returned this time with a fresh olive leaf. And I bet Noah was very excited, because that meant that the waters were receding pretty rapidly, and seedlings and cuttings of the olive tree were already beginning to grow again on the mountainsides. You know, so you see God here is really working. He's causing the plant life, it seems, to grow rather rapidly again. You know, sometimes we think of our human minds, we say, well, it would have taken a long time for the trees and the grass and the plants to grow up after that flood. But God is working in a mighty way, isn't he? Once again, taking care of his people. And the frequent reference here to 7 days in the narrative have had some people, some commentators say that these were Sabbath days. But you know, that was not an even number of weeks between the first of these and the second of these, so I don't think that's doubtful. The sevens, of course, number of perfection, completion. The narrative is not, completely clear on all the chronological events that took place during this time, but it does seem likely that Noah sent the raven out on the 264th day after the onset of the flood, and then the dove on the 271st day. And he sent the dove out again, and it returned with the olive branch on the 278th day. So we see as we get nearer the end of his stay on the ark, he's getting more and more excited. But 13 and 14 tell us, and it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried up off of the earth, and Noah removed the covering off the ark, and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the second month, on the 7th and 20th day of the month, the earth was dry. That amazes me. It really does. When we go have a lot of rain, it seems like it takes a good while for the ground to dry up. And we've had a flood and the ground's getting dry. That quickly, that major flood. It's the 208 after he sent the dove out again. And he's waiting 7 days later. The dove stayed away when he sent him out that time. And it shows that the land now was sufficiently dry. Vegetation was sufficiently established to support at least bird life. Again, God was causing the waters to decrease rapidly, just as he's causing the vegetation to grow rapidly. So, put away our thoughts. Put away what we think things should be and think about what God's doing here. But still, Noah waited another 29 days to the first day of the first month, 314 days after the flood began, to remove the ark's covering, presumably part of the roof here, and beheld dry ground for himself. I can't even imagine how he felt. Can you imagine after being on the ark for that long, God is taking you along over the waves, through everything. You haven't seen the land for a long time now. Can you imagine what he felt when he looked out there and could see something for the first time, dry ground? But as he looked around, he also noticed something else. There was still a lot of water around. And probably at this point, as he looked around, pretty forbidding and barren landscape on top of that mountain in general. Even though things are probably growing pretty fast, his memory is probably set on what was before, where everything was completely lush. So it probably looked a little different to him. He must have observed that there was still a lot of water. And I'm sure he's wondering about that. So he waited another 57 days. That's 371 days after the flood began, and determined that he could leave the ark and undertake life in the new world. You remember when you were in school, they talked about, we are the new world. Columbus discovered the new world. Well, it wasn't lost, it's here all along, people living here, but this is the new world. This is completely different than what Noah had been used to before. It's the same world, don't misunderstand me. But all those people are gone and everything. The topography has changed. It's a new world for him with the same problem. This was on the 27th day of the second month. These months were apparently those 30-day months in length. And so it's inferred here, as it was in Genesis 7 and 24. We know that we're using a lunar calendar here. The flood started on the 17th day of the second month. So they were in the ark a total of 371 days. That's a period of exactly 53 weeks. So a little over a year. I don't know about you, but I'd be getting pretty stir crazy thinking you were in that ark. You know the ark's a large vessel. And I'm claustrophobic anyway, so can you imagine what it felt like being in there with all the animals and different things? Verse 15, and God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth out of the ark, thou, and thy wife, and thy sons wives with thee. Bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kinds, went forth out of the ark. A year later, 17 days, God speaks to Noah and says, "Come thou and all thy house out of the ark." You know, I get ahead of myself now. God said to Noah earlier, "Come thou and all of thy house into the ark." Remember back in chapter 7, verse 1. God commands Noah to enter into the ark. Now he says, "Noah, I want you to go forth out of the ark with your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives with you." You know, these two commands are not contradictory, are they? Actually, they complement each other. They do it rather well. It's kind of like the two complementary commands of Jesus Christ. First, over in Matthew 11:28, Jesus says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor or heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Kind of reminds me of the command that comes to Noah, "Come into the ark." The command is all the more meaningful in the light of the fact that rest was the very meaning of Noah's name. But it was a preparation, though, for something else. Listen to Mark 16:15. Remember, Jesus says, "Come unto me." Now he says, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Aren't the commands very similar? Noah, you come into the ark. Noah, you come out of the ark. You have a job to do. They're going to repopulate the earth. Jesus has come into me for salvation. Now, you come unto me, go into the world and preach the gospel. You know, the ark had been like a great sheepfold with Christ as the door, through whom the sheep shall go in and be saved, but also they shall go out and find pasture. There are a lot of complementary commands like that. And Jesus, you come in, now you go out. It has nothing to do with losing your salvation, but as we talk about James, and we will be talking about James pretty soon on Sunday morning, faith that works. You come to faith in me. I'm not going to let you stand here. You've got something to do. Noah, yes, I saved you and your family from the flood. Now you have to come out of the ark, and you have a job to do. So we see that he obeys. The animal occupants awakened from their long rest. I feel like God may have caused a lot of them to hibernate. They were brought forth, and they're instructed to be fruitful and multiply. Repopulate the earth. Multiply upon the earth. You know, they and every offspring of theirs, from that day till now, they migrated all over the world. God led them to where he wanted them to be. And they spread from Mount Ararat to places where you only find certain animals today. But every one of the animals on earth today came from every animal that was on the ark. Just like every person on earth today, send me 1995, I'll tell you DNA story, but came from Noah. And Noah came from Adam. We can really shorten a lot of things up when you believe the Bible. And you save a lot of money too. The scripture is clear in insisting that every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth after their kind, went forth out of the ark. Everything. Can you imagine? I would like to have seen that parade. You know, this time of year people like to go to parades. I've never been a big parade person. But that's one parade I would like to have seen. Those animals coming off the ark. You know, like I said, all the present day dry land animals are descended from those who are on the ark. Every fowl of the air, everything. In like manner, every person, every tribe, every nation descended from Noah's family. So we see that later on in chapter 9, it's going to tell us these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them were the whole earth overspread. So both animal and men later radiated from Mount Ararat to the open territory all over the world. They could move east to Asia, they went into Europe, they went south into Africa, but first God had to prompt them because they all wanted to go to one spot. Even after the flood, we find man is still pretty rebellious. They won't obey what God says. Verse 20, and Noah's still building. I don't know if you ever thought, he worked a long time to build an ark. Now he says, and Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Wow. He gets off of the ark, and it's a different world for him. And I'm sure that even though things are growing, it doesn't look like he had remembered. He's up on top of a mountain. He probably looked down and still see water everywhere. He probably was maybe thinking of the imminent danger if the rains would come again. Boy, it could start again at any time. And I think this is probably prompting Noah a great deal. Because Noah's like we are. When are you closest to the Lord? When do you turn to the Lord the fastest? When you're in trouble, when you're worried, when you're scared? Noah's concerned. And so he's going to build an ark, an altar. Ever since Eden, the way to assess God had been through offering of an animal sacrifice. According to Noah, Noah had taken an extra animal of each clean kind on the ark for that purpose. He proceeded almost immediately when he comes off of the ark. He may have built it right off of the ark. He may have descended the mountain a little bit. I don't know. But he built an ark and made offerings of clean animals and clean birds to the Lord. Now this is the first mention of altar in the Bible. And these were sacrifices of both praise and propitiation. Propitiation, because paying something that you can't pay. So God gave thanks for deliverance from the corruption of that pre-flood world. He's thankful. He's thankful he was saved from that. And he was thankful that he was preserved through that flood. But yet he also is making intercession for his descendants in this new world that he's now living in, that their lives might be protected and the earth may not be destroyed again. Did Noah think about asking for strength not to fall back into the ways of that wicked, corrupt world that he had left behind? I think he probably did. That's probably on his mind too. There's no doubt it was a very generous offering on Noah's part. Some people don't think about that. How important, how major an offering this is. Clean animals presumably represent mainly the domestic animals, the ones with which Noah would have the greatest need, the ones which he would have the greatest love and compassion for. He would have later, he's going to also need them for food. In effect, did you see how much Noah is giving to God? He's not giving a tithe. He's giving 1/7. This is a huge offering he's given to the Lord. 1/7 of all the clean animals he has on that vessel, he's giving to the Lord. That doesn't require a little bit of faith. That requires a lot of faith. And so, but Noah also had a lot to which to praise and pray. and he had long since proved himself to be a man of strong faith. You know, Noah had believed God, and he still continued to believe God would supply his needs. He had seen a lot in the past year or so. He was already a righteous man who believed, and I'm sure his faith is really growing. And verse 21 is a beautiful verse. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. When you talk about, when you go into the tabernacle later, or into the temple, remember we were talking about Zacharias, where was he the other day? The altar of incense. That sweet savor, a place of prayer. Noah's offering and prayers are going up, and the Lord smelled a sweet savor. Isn't that beautiful? And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. The Lord smelled a sweet savor. He heard and he respected the believing heart of Noah. He respected his prayers. You know, whether they were verbal or not, God heard them. It's, because I said, represented by the incense rising out of the tabernacle, out of the temple, the smoke of the burnt offering. Noah had given his best to the Lord, not what was left over. He gave what was right, not what was left. What so many people miss is God doesn't look so much at the size, but at the heart. He knows that Noah is giving the best because he loves him. And generations who are yet unborn, including Noah's own, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, they have benefited from Noah's sacrifice of intercession and God's response to it. God, first of all, he relieved their immediate apprehensions. Noah is still concerned about all life on earth being destroyed again. He's thinking about maybe another flood, smiting the earth with a curse that they had just experienced. The curse of Genesis 8:21 here is not primarily the flood, but the curse of Genesis 3:17, which will prevail until the new earth, Revelation 22:3. This is evidenced by the language is so similar in both cases. The curse on the ground for man's sake, where man is the same word for Adam. God was not removing that curse at that particular time, though Noah sought comfort concerning which the Lord had caused that curse to come, that he would never again have worldwide judgment. You know, he perhaps wasn't thinking about the curse of Eden, but no, he could have been thinking about the visitation of death from the flood. Both of those affected the entire world. The curse on the ground, curse on man, and the curse of the flood. God would neither curse the ground again with any additional curse. He doesn't add anything to the curse of Eden. Still going to be the sweat of your brow. Still going to be a problem out there. But he didn't, nor again, he says, would he destroy any living thing as he had done in the flood. But the reasons he's doing this are peculiar, isn't it? When you think about it. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. You would think that this would be justification for smiting the earth, rather than pronouncing not to do so, except for the great paradox of love and grace, the love and grace of God. Here's a testimony of both, of what theologians call original sin, universal depravity, also God's redeeming mercy. Because man is helpless to save himself, his very thoughts, born and nurtured in sin, he desperately needs the grace of God. Without the grace of God, we're lost. On the basis of an atoning sacrifice, God's salvation and blessing are received by faith. You can go over to Galatians and read there. Galatians talks about this very thing. So for the very reason that man is completely unable to save himself, God saves him. That's the reason. Today, truly, He is the God of all grace. You see, for us, we would have said, well, man is so bad, I'm just going to destroy him. God says, no. Because man is sinful, because of the imagination of his heart, I'm going to show him grace. I'm going to be long-suffering. Noah had found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and through his faithful obedience, his believing sacrifice, so multitudes of his descendants found grace also. He indeed comforts us concerning our work and toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord had cursed. It's 5:29. Although there would never be a worldwide judgment either on the ground or on all living men as long as the earth continued in its present form, there would, of course, be a perpetual testimony to both, easily seen by all men yet to come. The testimony of the flood is seen everywhere. You see it in the structure of rocks, of the earth's crust. You find it on top of the highest mountains. It's a worldwide fossil graveyard, and there's an absolute universal evidence of that cataclysm, of the flood. Man's perverse and depraved nature has somehow distorted both the system of, we've just fallen into a system of evolution and uniformity. Peter says man is willfully ignorant. That's what happens when you don't listen to the Word of God. Ignorance can be cured, but man is willingly ignorant. They don't want to be cured for that ignorance. But the evidence is here. It's everywhere for those who have eyes to see. Remember 2 Peter 3:9. Here is the reason that God did not say, I'm going to curse man, I'm going to destroy the earth again. God is long-suffering to us, with not willing that any should perish, but all should come to repentance. You see, the Bible is always the same. It never changes. One more verse tonight, and we'll be finished. Verse 22. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. The duration of God's grace, His gracious promise here to Noah, would be while the earth remains. Someday, however, the day of the Lord will come. At that time, the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up, according to 2 Peter 3:10. Then the very elements will disintegrate, and all the effects of the curse on these elements will be removed before they're brought together again. We'll really have a new world, a new earth then. Even things like this, the fossils in the rocks, along with all the other worldwide witness of that flood, are going to disintegrate and disappear. Why? You won't need them anymore. We will be in eternity with the Lord. But until that day, the Lord says the physical process can be counted on. You know, most of the earth's natural processes depend in one way or another on the consistency of the earth's rotation. The solar system, as they rotate around, the controlling of the day and night cycles, the month cycles, the summer, winter, spring, and fall. They're always there. God said everything will remain. That's why when they want to send a rocket to the moon, they don't aim at the moon, do they? They send it where the moon is going to be when they reach that point. Because God's plans are perfect. So God has assured us that His regular order of nature, rain and snow and cold and hot, will continue. Everything in its own season, the fixed cycle of day and night, we're going to prevail from that time on. And when we return at the first of the year, we'll begin chapter 9 of Genesis. As I promised, about 30 minutes, and we're done tonight. 30 minutes and 23 seconds.